Hello guys and welcome back to another Premier League predictions video. Today we return with Game Week 12 just before we head into another international break. But we kick off the fixture with Wolves hosting Tottenham at Molineux, where I have gone for a 2-1 victory for Tottenham. Tough one to predict because although Wolves lost their last game against Sheffield United, which was a pretty poor defeat, they are a lot better at home, and obviously Tottenham are going to have no Romero, no Udogie, no Van der Ven and no Maddison as well. So 4 big key players for Tottenham missing. Despite that, I have still gone for them to win it by 2-1. I think Wolves without Pedro Neto lack a real attacking threat. So although I have gone for them to score, I think Spurs will still win it. Game 2, sticking with North London, sees Arsenal hosting Burnley at the Emirates in a game that I think many will have predicted a home victory, which is exactly what we've gone for. No beating around the bush. I've gone for Arsenal to win it by 4-0. Every time I see Burnley, I think they're getting worse and worse. Their away form is really poor. Arsenal are good at home. It's just a bit of a no-brainer. I've gone for 4-0. I don't think Arsenal will score more than that. I think when Arsenal want to, they can really turn it on, and we've seen a few times this year they've put a couple of goals past teams. So I've gone for 4-0, and I think they'll win pretty comfortably. Game 3, again staying in London, sees Crystal Palace hosting Everton at Selhurst Park. Tough game to predict because Palace are generally very good at home. There's not many goals in Palace's games. Everton struggled at the start of the season, but they have picked it up recently, so I've actually gone for a 1-1 draw in this one. Everton got a good point against Brighton at home in Game Week 11. Palace also won away from home at Burnley, but I think I see this one being quite a tight game. I was tempted to chuck a 0-0 in, but I think both teams have been scoring goals here and there, so I've gone for 1-1. Game 4 sees a really struggling Man United side hosting Luton in what must be seen as a must-win game for United. Really poor run of form. They threw the Champions League game away in midweek against Copenhagen. 2-0 up, Rashford red card, ended up losing the game 4-3. Crazy game, but heading back to Old Trafford against Luton, this is a must-win game for Manchester United. Of course, Luton, off the back of that 1-1 draw against Liverpool, will be feeling buoyed by that, but I have gone for United to win it by just a single goal to nil. They've been so poor this year. I genuinely don't know what to predict in this game. I think I had to go for a United win, but I've only gone for a goal to nil. And Game 5, which is the final Saturday fixture, sees Eddie Howe returning to Bournemouth, where it all started for him, taking his Newcastle side back to the Vitality. And for this one, I've gone for Newcastle to win it by 2-1. They may have a bit of a hangover from the Champions League in midweek, where they lost in Germany to Dortmund. Quite often we see both teams to score in those fixtures where a team are sort of coming back from a midweek game. I do think Newcastle will have too much for Bournemouth, although they do have a lot of injuries at the moment. I've gone for 2-1, but I wouldn't be too surprised if Bournemouth nicked something. Heading into Sunday then, and Unai Emery's Aston Villa, with that amazing home record that they've got this year, hosting Fulham on Sunday. And for this one, I've gone for a 3-1 victory for Aston Villa. They're so good at home. They score goals for fun. However, they do concede quite a few goals as well. They played at home in the Conference League in midweek, conceded to Alkmaar. So despite Fulham having some difficulty at the attacking end of the pitch this year, I have gone for both teams to score just because Villa seem to be struggling for clean sheets, but I can't look past them at home at the moment. Game 7 sees Brighton taking on Sheffield United at the Amex, and when I was submitting my predictions for this one, I was looking at it and going, Brighton without a clean sheet all season long, if they don't get it in this game, I don't think it's ever going to come. Of course, Sheffield United are off the back of that brilliant victory, late victory against Wolves, but I can't look past Brighton in this one. They're at home against Sheffield United, who are struggling this year. You'd think Brighton would win it, and I was tempted to go for both teams to score, as it's been a common theme with Brighton games this year, but as I said, if it doesn't come in this game, I don't think it's ever going to come. Heading into Game 8, Liverpool hosting Brentford at Anfield, and for this one I've gone for a 3-0 Liverpool victory. They have been leaking goals in most of their games this year, and they did lose in midweek away at Toulouse, but I think it was quite a rotated side. I think they probably had one eye on this fixture on Sunday, knowing that they're most likely going to make it through their Europa League group. Brentford have been on good form recently, but I've gone for Liverpool to win it by 3-0. I think it will be quite a comfortable victory for them, but again, I wouldn't be too surprised if Brentford do get on the score sheet. They do look very dangerous with Mbermo on that right hand side. Game 9 sees West Ham taking on Nottingham Forest, a great win in midweek for West Ham Thursday night against Olympiacos, and I've gone for them to carry on that good run with a 2-1 victory against Nottingham Forest, who have a brilliant home record, but away from home they're not quite so good. Again, West Ham may have that sort of European hangover, which is why I've gone for both teams to score, but I do think that West Ham will win this one, and I think this could potentially be a nice point to kickstart their season. And the final game of the fixture, it's the big one, Chelsea against Man City. Tough one to predict because Chelsea haven't lost against any of the traditional top 6 this year. But saying that, this is Manchester City and it's a different kettle of fish. I've gone for City to win it by 2-0. The games between the two are generally quite close. I normally go for a 1-0 scoreline, but on this occasion, with Chelsea's defence being a little bit leaky, I have gone for City to score 2. I don't think that Chelsea will score. I'd love it if we got a point. I would absolutely take that, but I think City will win it. I've gone for 2-0, and our joker game this week is Game 2, which is Arsenal against Burnley. As I mentioned earlier, I think Arsenal will win that pretty comfortably. I was toying between Game 8 and Game 2, of course, 8 being Liverpool against Brentford, but as I mentioned, I think there is a chance that Brentford could potentially score, whereas I don't see it with Burnley, so I've gone for Arsenal and hoping that they're going to score 4 past them. Let's go and take a look how we're getting on over on the predictions website, where again it's still just so tight. Here we are then, guys, and we are still sat in 8th place. Very, very tight and not a huge amount of movement this week, and the reason for that is because there weren't many correct predictions. It was a crazy weekend of scores, which we'll take a look at in just a moment's time, but as I say, still very, very tight. We're only 4 points outside of the money places now, so again, another good week before the international break would be lovely, and potentially we can close the gap and maybe even make it into the top 4 before we head into that 2-week international break. As you can see, it was a very, very low scoring fixture this week. Tom and Dazza at the top both did well, getting 10 and 8 points, but beyond that the highest score was 6, 5, 4 and a lot of 3s as well. No one really did particularly well. There was only 3 correct scores in the entire fixture, which is just absolutely crazy. So taking a look at the breakdown of the fixture, and we're just going to focus on this top row here. And we had some frustrating results, kicking off with the early kickoff, which saw Fulham hosting Man United. We had a draw, a 1-1 draw. Of course, it was 0-0 until the last minute when Bruno Fernandes scored, which got a couple of people 1 point. It would have only been an additional point if it had stayed 0-0, but it would have helped us out. Every little helps, of course. Similar sort of thing with the Brentford-West Ham game. We had a 1-1 draw. It could have potentially been 2-2, but of course Brentford went on to win it, so not many points there either. And then the most frustrating one, Burnley against Crystal Palace. I'd gone for 1-0. I think I was one of the only people in the whole fixture to have 1-0 Palace. And of course they scored in like the 95th minute to make it 2-0. Ruined my 3-pointer and I was absolutely raging after that. There's quite a few people who had Man City to win as their joker. I of course only had 3-0. When it got to 4, I was very, very nervous. Obviously ended up 6-1, which nobody had. So 2 pointers all round was absolutely fine with me. Similar thing with Sheffield United winning, not many people having that result. Dazza with a good 1 point in there. But we did pick up 1 point for the late kickoff with Newcastle beating Arsenal, and it was a very, very similar game to what I predicted in the previous video. Good atmosphere, Newcastle playing kind of off the crowd and the atmosphere, and that's exactly what happened with the 1-0 victory. So another point there, and then absolutely nothing for the rest of the fixture. Obviously, Forest beat Villa, at the City Ground. Luton drew with Liverpool, which screwed a few people over. And of course, Tottenham losing to Chelsea in that crazy game on Monday Night Football. One of the best games of football I've watched in a long time. So yeah, not many points scored, and the table stays pretty similar to how it was before. I have still got the lowest points tally out of the people that I know. So obviously Callum's just ahead of us on 97, and then my dad and my mate Griffin on 98. So it is very tight, but I need to make sure I don't finish below all three of them this year. So last fixture before the international break, we need to make sure it's a good one so we can sit pretty heading into that 2-week break. Guys, that will do it for today's video. I'll catch you in the next one very soon, and peace.